Go ahead. Good afternoon and welcome to the Hood River White Salmon Bridge Authority meeting for August 24th. Get right into the roll call. From Oregon, I see Grant Paulson, Arthur Babbitts, and Mike Fox, voting members. Alternate Catherine Thomas, welcome back.
Thank you.
Nice to see you in person, and Jake Edwards here in the room. For Washington, myself, Jacob Anderson is here in the room, and Doug Gibson is here in the room. We'll be voting members. And I see Mark Fleming here, and we have Keith online. Don't see Ben. And we do have a quorum. Are there any modifications or additions to the agenda? Hearing none, we'll proceed with the agenda as presented. Approval of the meeting minutes from the August 10th meeting.
I'll move to approve the minutes from August 10th.
Second.
Those in favor? Motion carries. Public comment. We'll look for public comment. 3 minutes per person. We'll cut it off at 30 minutes. We haven't had that problem yet. There is no one here in the room for public comment. Is there anyone online that wishes to comment? Seeing none, we'll keep moving along. Executive reports. I do not have anything to report at this time. What about you, Grant?
We had a number of meetings and things going on the past couple of weeks. Been very busy. Number of strategic decisions we have to make over the next short amount of time. A lot of this information we'll talk about in the agenda. So we'll save that for those particular items.
All right. Thank you, Grant.
Yeah, just a couple high points. ODOT, I did email with Rob Waltman, who's the local programs coordinator. He did reach out to his folks internally. He did point out internally to his own folks that our service agreement started back on May 31st of 2024, and let them know that this was now the longest standing agreement that he's been waiting on. So he said they did take a look at it. It looks like it's back. Did make some headway to moving into the next step. So hopefully we'll see that. We're waiting on a service agreement as well as a funding agreement for CDS. So he is continuing to push his legal staff to get that done. So HRWSBA has been setting up some meetings with the tribes for the MOAs. So we've got some tentative in-person meetings coming up with each tribe to go back and present to their councils again. They also sent an email to Umatilla stating that all the changes have been finalized and that they could go ahead and move forward with that agreement back to their council. So hopefully we'll see that Umatilla agreement come back signed from their group, and we can move forward with that MOA. So two good things there. We have finished up the cost schedule risk analysis and the project cost estimate update. We're working on one last reconciliation of just being able to walk through the 30% estimate to the 60% estimate. What it showed is that our contract price has remained the same. Our confidence probability has went up. So that's good. Our contingency has went up some from what we had there. So we're making progress there as well. And that our continued biggest risk on the project is obtaining funding. That really drives all the rest of the risks, and the rest of the impact on the project is our ability to get funding. So, and then the other big item is we had a debrief last week with USDOT on our bridge investment program. I thought that was very positive, very informative. We're making some updates and we'll be resubmitting that. Our project is still ranked as recommended, which moves us on to the next stage. So we're still in the running for that money. So we anticipate that we're saying by the end of the year. No definitive yet on when we'll hear on that, but we're anticipating this year that we'll hear something on that. So all kind of positive things moving the project forward. So
Will you be giving more details on that later?
I think the funding and finance, are we going to give a little more detail on the BIP? There's not a lot of, I
You said it
guess
was very informative.
it was as far as like what we should be focusing. One of the things they said focus on was our BCA. So we're going back and focusing on that. The benefit cost analysis, which gives you your benefit cost ratio. So we want to go back and focus on that just to make sure that that's as strong as possible. The rest of the categories, we were medium high. That was the only one that we were medium on. That all led to us being, like I said, recommended. We'd like to get that medium up to medium high and get ourselves to highly recommended, but either one are about equal in relationship. IBR, the interstate bridge to the west of us, was recommended when they got their $1.2 billion bridge investment grant awarded to them. So everything.
There's a slight difference there. I mean, there's a slight difference.
Our project's
They have a
better?
lot. We think so. But politically, there's a lot more support on that one than it is on.
Yeah. So, but we're in the same category. There's been other projects across the country that have done well. So we're making sure that things like making sure our record of decision is in the packet, making sure that our progress to 60% is in the packet, making sure they know that we're going to finish design this year is in the packet, making sure they know that we're ready for construction. All of those things are Coast Guard approval, all of those things, making sure they're actually in the packet. We submitted them as supplemental information, but we want to make sure they're all actually in the packet that they're reviewing. So it's actually in one place for them.
So you didn't get any verification that they are or aren't?
We did not get any verification. No, so we're wanting to make sure that we get them in there. The other thing is updating letters of support. We got 4 new letters from the treaty tribes. All 4 of them sent us actual official letters on their letterheads. Last time we got updates was in 2023 from them. So it was good to get a refreshed letter. Some of those were like emails instead of actually on their letterhead. So it was nice to get them actually on their letterhead. CRIPFIC also sent us another letter of support.
And Bureau of Indian Affairs. I think we got 6.
Yeah,
altogether.
BIA as well. So we got 6 different letters from all of them. Was great. Not Blue Origin, wrong place. Airbus sent us a really good letter about how important the bridge was to their operation. So that was good. So we're going to include that, and then all of the letters that we've supplied previously, we're gonna provide those again as well. So.
And 60% estimate shows we're holding the number.
Correct. So, and that, I think that's a great thing. And frankly, we could start turning dirt as soon as we get this money. There's activities that we could go out and start doing today if we had all the funding. We've also been coordinating with HRWSBA to make sure that we've got a checklist for all the steps that we need to do, and have started conversations with them, and we'll continue those as far as the early work activities and what we would want to do early. Because it's a kind of a phased project, we would want to maybe phase some of that work and start doing early buys and things like that. So we've started those conversations, and we'll continue those with HRWSBA. So to me, the project's ready. We're ready. We just need the federal money, and we'll be off and running. So
There's still stuff to do.
there is. There's a lot to do to get there. Don't want to say there's not, but I think we're in a great position that if we get that funding, there's nothing standing in our way outside of the funding to get there. So
There's a lot of stuff that we got to be doing in parallel,
absolutely.
assuming that we get the money.
Yep.
The very next day, we have to have a whole bunch of other things lined up that just go wrong,
Yep.
wrong.
I think we know what those are. I think we know how to do them. I think it's just a matter of like I said, the one thing that's the least in our control is the funding. And getting that, I think, then opens the door to everything else to start moving faster.
The only thing I might add to that is that we have a chance of getting a high rating in the merit criteria. So we're really close to that. There's just one of, I think, the 5 criteria that we didn't rate highly on. So I think there's You can be highly recommended, or medium high, and then recommended.
So you have medium, high, medium, high, and high. We were medium high on two. There's three categories. We were medium high on two, medium on one. You have to be medium high or better in order to get highly recommended. So that was the focus of the BCA, was to focus on the one that was medium. We've got paths to go forward to get that. We're going to revise those pieces and then resubmit that information. So, I mean, with that, we think we'll qualify for that.
So you believe that you've got a method to get the BCR up back to where we were before or higher, is my understanding.
We've identified some areas that we think we can do that on, yes. And make sure we're clear on that, where it is. One of the things that we had not included previously was the percentage of, we included the percentage of local users crossing the bridge using the known source streetlight data. Using what we know locally, because that data showed that it was only 36%. In the discussions the last time, we identified that as being low. Because we're at a 1.9 BCA, or BCR, benefit cost ratio, you only have to have a 1.5 benefit cost ratio in order to be highly recommended. So in order to maintain that, we want to change that, modify that to use existing toll data, which tells us that there's more than 36%, which I think all of you identified and would agree to from the last discussions, that there's more than 36% of the vehicles using the bridge are local. The toll data tells us that that's 70+%. We're still analyzing to get the exact number. But that number and that increase will put us back up into that over 1.5 threshold.
Why is that a greater benefit?
You're getting way on beyond what I can tell you now.
Consistent. This is the highest PCR, I think, that we've ever had in an application, and it's already well over the 150, right?
It is, and
Why will this get us? Why will this bump us into the higher?
So some of the things that we learned in the debrief were that they go in and they look at the assumptions that you make and they adjust your score. They adjusted our score down to where we were below that.
Oh,
And what we've done is identified areas where we didn't take advantage of it. We're going to take advantage of those parameters, and that is leading towards moving us back to a 1.5 or better.
What did they bump down and what was ours?
So we were at 1.9 and they bumped it to a little over 1.2. The biggest area that they did was in our assumption of when and how we applied the seismic vulnerability. We had done a compounded, basically saying that in 50 years, if you go a year and you haven't had an earthquake, then you have a less chance the next year, a greater chance for it happening in the next year if you're working within that 50 years. They don't look at that way on probability. They look at it as it's the same every year. So they made that adjustment. That was probably the biggest thing that they did. But like I said, we had some things that we had not put in there because we didn't need to be more than 1.9. We were trying to be conservative. We're going to add those back in because we've got updated data on the tolls and on the local user percentage, which will drive our number back to above that one.
So the tolling study that we just finished then
helped to inform some of that
and back that up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that publicly available sourcing though? Because they said over and over, so it would be an easy document to Google and they could find easily.
Yeah, we can pull, I believe it can be public information, that it is public information. It's basically the users of the BreezeBy system. So we can look at their zip codes and look at that. And that is information that is public or can be made public, right? You're not giving away an individual user account information, but just simply using zip codes to determine what percentage local it is. So you can do that. I think he's made that.
Put that on the website so it goes up when you Google.
Why does having more local traffic increase your DCA?
Do you want to speak to that, Carrie? You're beyond me on some of that.
Yes. So how that works is that local one of the big benefits of having the new bridge, and this is especially true after 2037 when the old bridge closes completely, which is our projection, and they did not take us to task on that, incidentally. They agreed with that modeling that we did that said that eventually the old bridge is going to get too expensive to maintain, can't be maintained, and will have to be closed. So the local population is the population that most, I shouldn't say benefits. They benefit the most from the avoided cost of the detour to the Dalles or to the Bridge of the Gods. So that's a 44-mile detour from someone who's on one side of the bridge or the other and wants to get to the other side. And the more local you are to this bridge, the more you benefit from having this bridge here. And so in the previous study, we feel like, and we're doing some research to verify this, but we feel like we underestimated the number of local people who were receiving that benefit. So, and it turns out that the model is fairly sensitive to that, and that by increasing the number of people who get the advantage of having a local bridge, meaning an avoided detour if the bridge isn't there, small increases in the number of people that get to claim that benefit help us a lot. The other factor that Mike didn't mention that's actually helping us a good bit is we now have, through our investment grade traffic and revenue study, 2026 total traffic numbers and traffic projections that CDM Smith was able to make. And our previous projections included 2024, which was not a good year for the bridge. It was down to 4.1 million vehicles. 2025 was 4.4 million vehicles, which is much more on the curve that we would have expected. And so CDM Smith is actually projecting the compound annual growth from here on out to be based on that 4.4 million vehicles, not the 4.1 million vehicles. So we now have a data set that allows us to claim higher traffic, and higher traffic means more people get the benefit of the bridge, which helps us in our benefit cost analysis.
Thank you, Carrie. Do you have anything else that you wanted to hit on? And do you have anything?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Let's go.
Short government relations update today. Focus is getting the EFP application in, of course, so communications and Summit and other folks on the team are participating in that process. Make sure everything's updated with all the great work we've done in the past year. Last week, the project met with legislative candidate Scott Hagee, who some of you know. Scott is a sitting Wasco County Commissioner and engineer by day. He's running for Oregon House District 52. So thank you to Commissioners Edwards and Thomas from the Government Relations and Communications Committee for joining that. Co-Chair Grant Polson also joined the meeting. Scott was very aware of the project, crosses the bridge a lot, like all of us, and was very engaged. So good meeting. And that concludes our meetings with Oregon side legislative candidates. That's my report. Any questions?
Thank you, Dan. Let's go to partner updates. Do we have any partner updates?
The port does. We had a pretty successful stuff on the bridge happened last week with Shannon Wilson. They were on and off the bridge in less than 5 hours to drop the equipment. They are projecting picking up that equipment 12:30 a.m. on the 27th, with the 2 days expected to be more than enough to retrieve it. Assuming that goes off without a hitch, that will complete the geotechnical piece for your guys' work.
Thank you, Amanda. Anybody else? All right. Keep moving along here.
Yes. I interrupt for just a minute.
Yeah.
We're talking about that. You might as well just say that with core drilling on Vent 11, which is what we're talking about, was finished last Friday. So it went very, very well. And the indications are the level, go ahead.
The rock depth was in line with what they had done when they did the non-invasive scanning of the ground. It was relatively close, so they're not going to have any major changes to the design from that. So that finishes up all of our geotech exploration work. So that's good.
So it's confirmation of the assumptions we made.
Confirmation of the assumptions and no major changes to the design based on those. So
Yeah, the depth was no surprise. They don't know yet about the strength of the rock. It's got to go to lab.
That'll be a little bit fun. Good. Okay, great. Thank you. So I'm trying to move this along because Sean's going to take us through some of the finances today. So we'll just keep moving. Invoice approvals from the packet. Anybody have any comments or questions regarding invoices?
The E&C committee looked at both HNTV and Kiewit invoice, and we have no issues with and recommend that we approve.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The door is open for one more month. So we'll go to committee reports and let's start with E&C, engineering and construction.
The only one we're going to talk about today. We met earlier this week. We had a presentation from PFM on financing comparisons and CDM Smith, where we looked at both the TIFIA loan and the a bond type of an approach. I guess the next meeting, it's going to be presented here.
no, not until September. We want to meet with the communications committee and the governance committee.
Yeah. Okay.
Bring it back to the board based on that feedback.
So stay tuned for that. It was a good session. I thought the information was really clear. See how the other committees feel, but pretty obvious discussion. Go from there. Sean gave us a CSRA and project control estimate update. Right now, the guys are going through and you're creating a reconciliation sheet, both escalated and unescalated, between the 30 and the 60% estimates, and then a major reconciliation items between the two, because bottom line didn't change, but how things moved around did change some. And we want to recognize that. As I said, we've already got.
Excuse me, Mike. When you say bottom line, it's never really been clear what Kiewit's bottom line is. Are we still at 1.12 with them, or?
No. We have an estimate that a subcomponent of that is Kiewit.
Right.
And that number is about 750 million, give or take some. And that's moved around a little bit since the 30%. We did not ask Kiewit to do an estimate this time. We're holding that off for 100% because that's where we're going to start our negotiation with phase 2.
Okay.
We talked about the test pile program at some length, and I think there's a couple of things that have been brought up today regarding that particular program. And that's kind of the things we talked about.
I think I'll add two things. I think the reconciliation, and I dealt with these in the past, but I think Mike's idea of getting it escalated and non-escalated, I think he's got Sean and the team scratching their head a little bit, but what that does is it really makes it a usable tool for us as we start buying things in phases, whether that was our estimated amount, whether it's estimated amount plus escalation, and how that plays out. So that in my mind was a key thing. The other thing I wanted to bring up a little bit is the aesthetics that we've been working on and some of the pieces around that. I think we reported last time that Hood River County has accepted our application, so it's open for comment now. And Arthur and I have met with Bog once. We haven't asked of them to do it again.
Friends of the Gorge.
Yeah, sorry, thank you. Friends of the Gorge. We talked a little bit about with Christy this morning, and if you want to kind of interject some.
Yeah, by the way, did you see that we got a reply from Gabe that he wants to meet with us?
Okay, good. I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, so that just came in just as I was headed over here. So let's see. So what kicked this off was somewhat both late and disturbing response to the aesthetics memo, which seemingly wanted to reopen issues that have long been closed. The first issue, the scenic area management plan uses the phrase that the replacement bridge needs to provide views through it, which they are describing in a way that implies that they think that that means that it has to be a truss construction bridge. And then they took issue with the color of the bridge, suggesting that they didn't like the color of the concrete and they didn't like the color of the steel. And in both cases, these are things where huge amount of work. I mean, the type, size, and location study was done in 2011 or so, and it was clear from them that it was not going to be a steel truss bridge. Christy has described it that, and so the request here is going to be for an engineering statement to explain why a modern bridge like this is simply not going to be a steel truss construction. And Chris described it from a seismic point of view that it would not be possible to make it seismically resilient. So we think that the best thing to do for this issue is to get a very brief statement of why the engineering bridge would not allow for a truss construction. And then the second thing concerning the coloration, there's the issue that tinting of concrete when you're going to have 1,000 batches of concrete is going to, what we've been told is, yeah, you can do it, you're just not going to like the results. And so getting an engineering statement of that also, just so that we tie it up neatly so we can say, look, we thought about this. We're the guys who are supposed to be working on this. Here's what the analysis showed. These are not really, they don't fit into the category that you're trying to fit them in of things where your input matters, frankly. So we need to get those wrapped up as cleanly as we can. And a simple paragraph or two from engineering on each of those issues could allow us to say, yep. Eric and I explained this in great detail when we met face to face, and we got lots of nods. And, that makes sense, but you guys have really thought of everything was something that someone had said. But wrapping it up with a nice bow on it, saying, "Yep, here's an engineering memo which explains everything that we told you."
Is that because they don't have, let's say, a right to a voice on matters related to engineering, but only on aesthetics?
So this is in regards to the scenic area permit, right? So to the land use permit, right? Mm-hmm. And that has a requirement that it comply with the scenic area management plan. Scenic area management plan uses the terms visually subordinate and harmonious, and then describes what that means in a bunch of principles. We believe that we've met all of those. They're saying that their view is, their preliminary view before they spoke with us was that we did not meet the harmonious standard, which is ridiculously vague standard, which is part of the frustration. But we've got this ridiculously vague standard, and they're saying, well, you don't meet it. We're saying we kind of do. And there were things that were stated like, from a distance, there's nothing iconic about the bridge. It's like, yeah, from a distance, you want the bridge to fade into the background. That's what we view to be harmonious. And so it's just a really, really odd discussion, honestly. But we think that we have pretty solid grounds based on both engineering and English language. But we want to wrap it up as cleanly as we can and have a follow-up discussion with them where they made it clear that they're open to further discussion and that the issues that they raised in their initial letter aren't necessarily issues that they're going to raise down the road. And that's why we're trying to set up a second meeting with them. We'd like to
The opportunity is to build on that. I think we had some success in our first meeting. Let's follow up, talk about where we are, what we've done, keep going with that. The comment period is open at Klickitat County. So I'm sorry, thank you. At Hood River County. So that's the opportunity to do that before we get into an appeal period.
Right. So do we have anyone thinking further ahead if this potentially drags out, given how public comment and upcry can really cause some kerfluffling in long-term planning?
Yeah.
Arthur's got some ideas.
Okay, great. So as long as it's governance committee on that, just thinking like what happens next. If
I
we're
mean,
thinking
I'm on that. I'm not saying it's a committee issue, but I'm on it. And, we're having a good discussion with them. So I anticipate us being persuasive and getting a reasonable result out of this. I should say just for the record that given that Hood River County is reviewing the land use application, I've announced on both sides, I believe now, that I will be recusing myself from the land use side of this, so for my county role in this. So I'm not talking to any of the planning folks about it. I'm not involving myself in any way in the Hood River County review of this.
Thank you, Arthur. Any other questions?
So I'm all yours on this.
I'll just
Make it blend in and be.
have us on 6, and we got kind of the same people.
I think that's down here further in information.
Is it?
So
Okay.
we'll get to that. So I think that gets us to action items. Yeah, Mike, are you going to lead us through that, or do you want me to give it a shot?
So we, as you know, have been moving towards a test pile implementation or installation plan where we would like to go out and install some test piling to see if there are any impacts to the existing structure when we go to install the trestle for constructing the new bridge. We've been working with Kiewit on that, on the scope and what that'll entail. Last week, we had our first sit down on what the cost of that program was going to be. We had our independent estimators, KMC, who is a sub-consultant for us, who is this or has people that have done this type of work, and they estimated the cost of it based on the scope. And then we also had Kiewit do that. They came back. I'm not going to get into specific numbers because it's in negotiations. I'll just say that there was a significant difference in those two numbers. We are meeting again Wednesday. So based on that conversation, we talked about some of the equipment that was being proposed, some of the approach that was being proposed to do the work, and better aligned on making sure we are all in agreement on how to do that. They were both going to go back, relook at their numbers, and then we're meeting again on Wednesday. In preparation of that not coming to a economics solution that we would want to recommend to the authority, we want to in parallel give ourselves an opportunity to go bid that work out. So the motions that we put together today are really in preparation of if that negotiation does not work out, we have the ability to pivot and move towards a competitive procurement. So one of those is to establish an oversight group. It could be one of the existing committees. It could be a different committee to work with staff on the development of the procurement materials and just kind of have a authority overview of that so that we can go out for a solicitation. And then also a part of that, because of that solicitation taking some time, there is a long lead item for material purchase that would need to be done in buying the temporary piling that would need to be purchased. And what we're looking at is that the authority would purchase that temporary piling. It's kind of a generic purchase in that there's not anything special about it. Because it's temporary, it doesn't have to meet Build America. There's 3 or 4 vendors that could supply it. So it's kind of a low risk purchase, but because of the long lead time, we think the authority would need to go out and purchase it as they procure somebody to go out and do the work. So
Like Fox's Place.
we can store them somewhere.
They get nestles right under pear trees.
Yeah. So those were the 3 motions that we put together. They're really in preparation. The final decisions will come back to the board. This just allows staff to get started putting those things together, getting pricing, putting procurement out, shortlisting a firm that ultimately then would come back to the authority for final decisions. But let's just get that process started.
These are the shells that get pounded into ground basically. That's like the coffin jam what you work inside.
It's a 36-inch. It's not quite the drilled shafts that are 10 feet. This would be 36-inch piling that the trestle platform will sit on, where the equipment will then sit on the trestle. That will do the work to install the shafts and install the rest of it.
These are the columns that'll hold the 300-ton crane.
Yeah, and there's about 700 of them that we need to install. They get as close as 50 feet to the existing bridge, and we just want to make sure that installing those, there's 2 different methods. One's driving it with the hammer, and then another one is kind of drilling it in like a concrete drill, reciprocal
vibratory hammer,
vibratory type hammer. So we just want to make sure that those aren't going to have an impact.
No, we want to make sure they don't have an adverse
impact. Well, no impact would be even better. But so we want to do that check because we want to know that now. We don't want to have a contractor out there start to do the work and find out we have because, like I said, there's 700 of these that we have to install. So.
And can I just repeat back what I heard then? Because we just got like a ton of information.
Yeah.
So because of potential difference in pricing for a test valve program between the current contractor we have who's under contract and has all that done. Insurance has been collected, everything's done. We're saying we want to create an oversight committee to lead the procurement of a potential outside contractor to come in and bid on a project to drill test pile into the ground to make sure that the current bridge is not adversely affected from the building of the bridge that we had potentially with this contractor who is now somebody else's test piling how they're going to move forward. And so you're creating 3 things: oversight committee, procurement for the test pile program, and then also for the procurement of the necessary equipment for the test pile program.
Material.
Okay.
Material only.
And they all
Where are we?
go together.
Understood. And where is this equipment being stored in all seriousness?
The material, we'll have to determine where that's going to be at.
Or where we're going to buy it before we know where we're going to store it?
Part of putting this procurement together is to get the specifications, figure out where we're going to buy it and store it, find out if one of the vendors could potentially store it at their site, have one of the contractors bring it up. Those details need to be worked out. This is just allowing it. What we're trying to do is not have to come back 2 weeks or a month from now to the authority to get permission to start something. We're wanting to start it now, do the legwork to figure out what we need to do as far as storage and cost and all of that, and then bring those decisions back to the authority. But because we're on a time constraint, this work has to be done in an in-water work window. You have a long lead item that could delay that. We need to start this work in January. We want to try to get ahead of it, be able to start the work in January to be able to complete it by March within the in-water work window.
But this is not under the current scope of the current contractor with the Kiewit. So it's
correct.
Where's the money coming from to pay for this program?
The money would come from the underrun that we're currently seeing under Kiewit's contract. So right now they're projecting an underrun that would be generating it. So it would be a deductive change order to the current Kiewit contract that would get moved over and would create a funding source for the new work.
This was the number one thing when you were analyzing ways to spend the underrun. This was the number one thing to improve contract overall schedule, cost, risk. Both of you?
Yes, this is one of your highest risk items that when you get to construction, if you have this happen after you've mobilized out a contractor and you find out that you're going to cause an issue with the existing bridge, it will cost you substantially more money.
Oh, I'm not discounting the South, but I'm saying the amount of time it's going to take for this organization, this authority to onboard a new contractor who's actually reputable enough to actually do the test pilot program itself is a lot of money and time. And so it might just be, are we considering that cost in our negotiation with our current contractor who's on board and has everything ready to go? Right. That's just I'm not a voting member, so I'm just throwing all the discussion out here now.
What we're trying to do here, it's not a massive amount of work. It's 18 piles.
Yeah.
It's about 8 to 10 weeks worth of work. It's not that big.
What's the estimated cost on that?
For allowed to, are we negotiation?
I would prefer to tell you that outside of the meeting because we're in a negotiations and we didn't set up an executive session. So if I could have a one-on-one conversation with you, do you have to
have an executive session on the agenda?
If you gotta have a 48-hour, we would need to notice times.
So
It's fine. It's on the agenda. It's on the agenda. You don't have.
If you guys say we can, I don't care. I can find sensitive when we can do it or not. So.
Yeah,
NA.
It
notify.
says NA, so.
Notify purpose.
More clarifying questions.
Yeah.
So there's 18 piles, like holes that we're basically going to drill in the ground. Is that right?
You're gonna drive some using a vibratory hammer, and then some of them you're gonna two different methods.
And they're different than the ones we're using for the main foundation of the bridge. Is that
Correct.
right?
That's correct.
And so these are for the trestle.
Correct.
Are there various sizes on the trestle, or is it?
They're planning to use 36-inch.
Okay, so all these will be representative of the trestle, which is closer to the bridge, existing bridge than the new, or than the main pilings for the new bridge.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll use the same scope we gave KMC and Kiewit to develop their estimate will be turned into the RFP. So the majority of the scope and work has been already developed. We just need to turn that into a public procurement document to be able to go out for solicitation.
So to kind of clarify, you're not asking us to approve, go out and get bids. You're saying get the documentation ready to go. And if the negotiation on Wednesday or shortly thereafter is fruitful, you're going to come back to us and say, we think you got to pull the trigger and go.
I would rather do that slightly different. I would rather go ahead and allow us to go out with the documents under the supervision of this committee.
Yeah.
And then bring the final decision before you cut a check back to the board. So we would go out, we would do the solicitation, we would shortlist a firm, and then we would bring that recommendation back to the
prior
board
to
with a
award.
cost, prior to award, but everything else would go ahead and move forward.
Has this been through legal?
We have not directly talked to legal. Tahi is following the Oregon procurement laws, but we will.
I'm more
have legal
concerned about
involved.
our contractual agreement with our current contractor. And if we can legally go outside to do this project outside of our current contract we have with them. So I would definitely want legal to sign off on that as one big issue. Second issue is if we go with a third party, because when we pound these in the ground, we're pounding them where they're going to go in the future, right?
No, so that has changed.
Oh,
So because of the complexity of trying to get them in the exact spot and then them not being there, the decision was that let's go ahead and they have to come back out and the potential of not getting them back out.
that was for environmental reasons, right?
Yeah. You have to bring them back out so that.
That's new information.
Yes, so the chances of them becoming an issue, we decided to drill these not within the permanent locations. So we'll draw them at a similar distance close to where the permanent location would be, but we will take them all back out after. And if we can't get one out for some reason, then when we cut it off, it won't be in the way of our permanent foundations and cause us a problem in the future.
So it evolved from put something in now that we can use later to through a series of environmental issues. There was one jurisdiction in the three that we're working with at the temporary piles that wouldn't allow it to stay there. And we came back to the point that it's better just to remove all of them. So it became strictly a test program. We added to it some environmental testing on how the sound propagation goes, sediment testing to understand how much sediment gets thrown out when they're going in and when they're coming out, because we'll have to do that. And also structural testing to understand if we really have to go all the way to bedrock at some of the deeper things. So it is strictly a test program. Primary is how does it affect the bridge? And then those other three are tertiary benefits of doing the program.
And we're using the bridge monitoring system to watch over a lot of this.
Yeah. So, yes, it did evolve. It's been quite a process.
Good enough information off the bridge monitoring system that it's going to be successful, that you're going to be able to create the correlations.
We're getting data from all of the sensors that we installed on there. Part of this test panel establishment is to go out and make sure that all of that data will be able to be, that we'll get all the right information to be able to tell that. So if there's anything that that we deem that needs to be additional, like we may have an additional hard surveyor out there to shoot points as well as a validation of some things. But yeah, we've validated the equipment that's out there is working.
Have we done any analysis over what we're getting on the noise for the current monitoring system yet? So just create a baseline before you go out and start doing
That
this.
a baseline will be established before we go out and do the testing. So that process
For movement or for noise?
Not for noise, but
Well, I meant noise in the system.
yeah.
You're currently taking data, you just haven't evaluated that yet.
Right.
And
So
that is
baseline-
one of the scopes of this effort is
You have data for the baseline, you just haven't analyzed it, created a baseline.
So that's a package that Keywood's got to go do that.
And the threshold development of where we would determine that there is an issue with the existing bridge needs to be developed.
Catherine.
Ladies first.
Thank you. So we don't necessarily know what the baseline is at this moment. And we're looking to approve a study to see what the shifts in the baseline would be from a different contractor who then would be relying on Keywood, correct? To just say, who owns the data? Do we own the data?
Authority owns the data.
Are we able to interpret the data outside of Keywood, or do we have staff that can interpret the data?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I guess my hesitation would be to approve a program. We're using the money that we save to approve a program to do test piling for something that's necessarily outside of this scope. It's needed, obviously, but the BIP funding hasn't happened yet. And so I would just, in the interest of long-term thinking, maybe be contingent on if the BIP or when that's approved, because we would probably be hearing about that in the next couple of months.
The problem with waiting for the dip, you're going to probably lose the in-water work window for your test pile program, which then means you're going in totally blind.
Yeah.
So you start into the true pile program, not really knowing whether you're going to hurt the bridge or not.
But in the way of starting,
Negotiate with Kiewit in that blind spot.
but the issue is that we need to have everybody on board for us to move forward with the test pile program, including who would be carrying the insurance, correct?
The contractors that we would end up procuring would have to carry those same insurance that Kiewit currently carries.
Okay.
That is very common for the people that would do this work. And the fact that Kiewit's not doing it doesn't affect, it'd be the same thing as if you had Kiewit did it and we couldn't come to an agreement on price and somebody else had to build it, the information is still good. So you're
Understood.
going to use the same means and methods to do this regardless of who ends up building the final bridge.
This is probably a medium-sized marine construction project, would we all agree? And it's currently end of August, and everyone's bidding their end of year. We're about to end the fiscal year. So all the major marine construction firms are more than likely already have the rest of their year booked.
Or they've got a hole.
Well, the ones we want don't have holes. The ones we want are not the first time they're doing test pile programs, which means they probably have their book of work scheduled through. I'm just, as a person who cannot vote, I think we're rushing into something that I think Kiewit and us will come to a negotiation because they need it just as much as we do. It's probably cost the onboarding of a contractor in this short window before January to get the work done. We're creating all these unforeseen or unneeded pressures, and I just think we should consider, but that's it. And I don't vote, so.
I would recommend, a lot of this comes back to an executive session.
And if there's additional detail that will help people. I don't know what the rules are.
There's a lot of new information that's come out that's wasn't included in the packet that I think we need to continue to discuss. This is a large ticket item, a very large ticket item. When you think about like how much money the bridge brings in an entire year versus the cost of this.
I agree, but when you consider how much this is going to cost you if this happens during construction, it'll be a drop in the bucket.
No one wants it. Everyone agrees we need the program, but we just need more information to decide the next steps for it, I would say.
Is the request though isn't the request to delegate the kind of the next steps to a small group of people so that like we wouldn't, if I understand this correctly, we wouldn't necessarily go out and do a solicitation tomorrow with this group. It would be like to be able to give them the sort of the runway to do that if that's deemed to be the most appropriate, or could be to put an RFI out to see, if there's even contractors that, have the time and availability or kind of take whatever
to figure out how to actually do it.
And keep us in the loop, like if, as things progress kind of on an accelerated timeline. Is that accurate?
Yes, so it's the purpose behind this is to prep as a plan B, as Mike just said, to not come to agreement with Kiewit on Wednesday to do this work at a reasonable rate. The idea then would be to put out a contract, go through the procurement process to identify someone else. We think there is at least 4 different contractors that would pursue this work, and have it competitively bid so that we get a reasonable price to do this work, and come back and make a recommendation to the full board to move forward with a different contractor if that's necessary. So then you all would vote on whether or not we would move forward. At that time, you could choose not to move forward if you wanted to.
So we're authorizing the actual procurement though.
You're authorizing us to put the procurement documents together and to get to a shortlisted firm that we can bring back to the full board to make a recommendation. So you're simply spending the money to put together a procurement so that the board can make a decision to move forward with a different contractor at a more reasonable cost if we don't get to a reasonable cost with Kiewit.
So as long as that committee, those committee members have the information, which we all don't have yet, that satisfies me at least that they can move forward. I don't see a need for us all to have that information if it's going to come back in a request for contract later.
But it's only coming back to approve the contract with the new.
Correct. So all you're going to have expended before you see it again is the process to do the procurement.
So
which means putting an RFP together.
My issue is the agreement we have with our contractor currently and making sure that is locked solid.
That's because
that is not part of their work. That is not their part of the work anyways. So if we're not authorizing for them to do it, it just not happens.
Right. We're confident that you can do this without a problem. We'll check it through legal, obviously, but we don't see any issues with you going out and doing it.
But maybe to address your issue, correct me if I'm wrong, but the negotiations happen on Wednesday. There may be a day or two follow-up off of that. If you guys can cut the deal and you feel that it's reasonable, you're going to come back to the board and say, we think we ought to award to Kiewit.
Yes.
And we're stopping doing any other work.
Correct.
So you're talking about a couple of days.
It's a contingency plan, basically.
Right. You'll have to do an amendment to the Kiewit contract to do a deductive change order with them, reallocate that money to cover whatever the proposed cost is for this that we end up agreeing to with them. And you have to still do that process as an amendment. So instead of doing that process, you would do it with another contractor. Either way, you have to do a change order to Kiewit's current contract to deduct down unspent money or unused money to date, to reallocate it for this level, this effort, and then authorize Kiewit to go do it, or you go through a process to authorize somebody else to do it.
So you're looking for a whole new general, not just the person who's
No,
come and drilled the
absolutely.
holes.
All we're looking for is somebody else to come in and do the piling, the installation of the piling
Okay.
at a rate, at a cost that is in line with and justifiable with our independent estimate.
Who's going to manage the monitoring side of the whole thing?
The monitoring would be done the
And-
same way.
And all the other things that you said that are going to be checked during it, who's going to be managing that?
That would be done the same way that we were planning to do it now. You're simply bringing in a different contractor to do the installation
And removal.
So
and
Kiewit
removal.
is the ones that's monitoring.
So Kiewit would have the monitoring equipment. They're developing the monitoring thresholds. They're developing the baseline. They would continue to do that with our oversight of fact checking it as well. The other environmental monitoring would continue to be done by them or Shannon Wilson. You're simply bringing in somebody else at a reasonable rate, if we don't get to a reasonable rate, to do the installation of the piling.
Isn't it likely going to be the same? It's not going to be Kiewit that was going to drill it. They were going to go hire somebody
No,
else.
they were going to bring their own equipment.
Oh, they were going to do their own.
Yes, they're bringing their own equipment. They're bringing their own stuff, their own overhead, their own staff to do it.
So worst case scenario, we spend the money for someone to run a procurement and find out that they in fact are the cheapest option.
Yes, you could end up in that scenario. I don't think you will. If we think that's
I'm just kidding, you know.
possible, and then you will have to award it to someone else because you can't go back on. You can't negotiate that way. That's not negotiating in good faith. If you're going to go back and then do that, if you don't go with them, you would have to go, and they can correct me if I'm believing right on that. You would not be able to go back to them once you chose to go out for a competitive bid. We would only do that if we thought that their current negotiated price was substantially out of line and was not justified.
We currently think it's there.
We know it's there. Take all doubt about it. There is no doubt right now that it is not justified.
Well, depending on when you did basic mobilization, I mean, even mobilization in the last 6 months have gone up by 30%. So, I mean, in all sincerity, there's some things that I hear you, but I'm just saying, I just think the amount it takes for us to put a procurement together and to negotiate and do all the things, the overhead and the back and forth and there's money that that's going to be left on.
What they're proposing right now. And their estimate was within the last month.
When was ours done? Not
Within the last month.
okay. Ours was done at the beginning of the year. It's like
Talking 10 weeks worth of work here.
no, totally. But I mean,
I think if you want more of what you're looking for, this needs to be an executive session, because there are answers to what you're wanting to ask.
yeah, but I trust the committee. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
So I agree with Grant. I don't think we can have an executive session today. It specifically says NA, not applicable. There are two ways to set up the agenda. Either we schedule an executive session for every meeting, and then we cancel it and say, nope, we have nothing to talk about. Or we add one when we're going to have it, and somehow our agenda goes down the middle and it leaves a space for it, but it says we're not having one. So I don't believe that we can have one today.
Okay, you should take that on
I think we should check
I'm on a fair
that.
amount of boards, and I think it's best to leave it on there and have an agenda point of decision,
Right.
to keep it or not.
Right. I agree. And that's not what we have.
I agree.
Without going into the details on this, I would say that, just kind of where we're at with the, in the procurement process and kind of preparing for negotiations, that anytime we see an opportunity and are kind of advised on an opportunity to have potential cost savings, I think it's good discipline for us to pursue those and to kind of trust the team to go out and investigate them, and not knowing the details, I'm in support of, giving that sort of deference to the team that's interested in trying to pursue that sort of path.
I agree with that.
Is it a guarantee that when we pull this steel out, we can reuse it again on the next?
It's not a guarantee. You might be able to reuse some of it, but the ones that go into the rock for the down the hole hammer are most likely once they set up. Once you drill a hole, put it in there and it kind of resettles, you're probably not going to get them back out. You're going to have to cut them off. Some portion of that probably could be reused, yes, but all of it, no.
Of course, when you reuse it, you got to.
Do we have to do 18 or I mean, is there a way to cheapen this project up a little bit with how expensive it is?
You need to purchase the 16 to 18 up front, whether you end up putting them all on the ground or not, or you save some of them, stockpile them somewhere. You could run into that scenario where, if we do a couple and we find out there's absolutely no way it's impacting the bridge, then maybe we stop early. It's not going to be a substantial difference.
But this could be used later.
You could make an audible, but you've already mobilized everything out there. You've already brought all the materials.
Yeah, but if it's the difference between 10 weeks and 2 weeks, you might be able to.
You save some. I mean, yeah, we could, that call would have to be made live. But, I mean, that would be something we would be watching for, is that we get out there and we're like, okay, there's no way. There's still some information that I think is beneficial to the project on the capacity of the piles, as well as some of the environmental things that kind of inform some of the flexibility we had later. So we'd want to do that. And then some on the methodology of like down the hole hammer of what it's going to be like when you do that, because when it goes through the overburden material, that can be a very lengthy process. So it can tell us a little more on productivity and what we're estimating, and kind of validate some of that information as well. But I mean, the idea would be don't do any more than we have to.
Well, there's a significant difference on productivity estimates between our ice and Kiewit, correct?
Not on this. There's not a ton of productivity on the test pile stuff.
No, but like when we did our estimate.
Originally, yes, there was.
There's a significant difference.
30% there was.
And so by doing this, we'll be able to get that productivity so that when it's.
You could validate it better to have some view. Now, it's a test pile program, so it's not full production piles, and you're going to see a difference there. It will give you some ideas of like down the hole hammer, how much difficulty you're going to have in the overburden that could provide another level of data. But yeah, I mean, when you get into production, it's going to be different.
Could be less.
Yeah.
So it seems to me like there are two options here. Number one, if we need an executive session in order to have adequate information to make this decision, we can schedule more than 24 hours from now another meeting by Zoom, have an executive session, and resolve that. Alternately, I am fine with appointing and delegating to a committee to work on this without me knowing this, knowing that I will know this information when they come back with an answer. So one way or the other, but I don't think we have to
sort of looking for a motion.
You can't bounce around on the side of it.
So one of the questions that occurred to me as we're talking about is at some point as we're going through the development of other documents, there's a point of no return. When we release an RFP, and when is that? I suspect it is after our next.
To the earlier.
Go back, right.
Well, it's once you get that RFP back and you've got
You have language to say.
contractors trying to respond to it.
You can have language, you could say you can cancel at any time during the process that you just write on the RFP, but I mean, but you can't go back to negotiate.
Right. Yeah, no, we don't want to do that, but I'm just.
Right,
there's a certain amount of time once you decide that's the path before.
If you want to be in the water in January, you have to have an RFP approved and awarded by September.
Yeah, but we're in the end of fiscal year and nobody's going to be bid. Everybody's is up to their eyeballs.
This is, I want to reiterate, this is a plan B. Plan A is to cut the deal with Kiewit.
But there's 3 firms is what you said. Likely out there that.
There's at least 3 or 4 that we know of.
In the Northwest. I mean,
at least could do this.
Do we know if
Yeah.
their plan of book is opening?
We are contacting them to check on interest. That's one of the things we're going to do is verify.
Are we legally able to do that with?
Yeah.
Okay.
As long as you tell them all the same information.
Prior to the full RFP being issued, as your committee.
We have to authorize it, so
yeah.
We have to have another meeting before we issue. Well,
no, we weren't planning on that. We were what I was thinking was.
You want us to authorize an RFQ now?
Yes, that we would go ahead, work with this subcommittee, go through the RFQ process, come back to you for the selection decision. and come back to you for.
So I don't see that from a process standpoint as being the right way to do it. I think the right way to do it is you need to complete your negotiations with Kiewit on Wednesday. And if that is not fruitful, we hold a special meeting to then issue an RFP. I think that was the appropriate way to do it from a governance standpoint. And then I would also schedule an executive session for that same time if that's the direction that we need to go. This is more money than, we spent in multiple grants that used to take, huge amounts of time that we would spend months discussing.
What's Kiewit's current bid?
You can't.
You asked that question 10 minutes.
That was pretty sneaky.
We can make a motion to schedule a meeting for.
Like Thursday or something shortly thereafter.
But it should be an executive session.
No, you would have an executive session first, then you would have the actual meeting for what to do.
Right.
And then you can present a more fully fleshed out program. I guess one of the things that I keep coming back with, I do want to see the productivity. And I want to make sure that the productivity is something that we can use to continue to hone in our ICE. Because there was a significant gap in terms of productivity. And I know it won't be as productive, but you'll know how fast you're pounding, and it's going to be the same size of machine likely and everything else, right? Or drill or whatever. Some of the other decisions, like if we find that there's an issue during this, then we're spending a lot of money to then make a decision, because I don't think we're ever going to have enough money in the pot in order to fix the current bridge, to upgrade it, to make it strong enough to have us go build the other bridge. You're talking hundreds of millions.
That may not be the answer. I mean, until you know what you wouldn't do that.
That's what I'm saying. You
switch to like the velvet drills instead of using steel ones.
Yes. But what I'm getting at is at some point you get to the decision of, is it better to know now, or we take a policy decision where if there is an impact on the bridge when we start going, you shut the bridge down through the course of construction. It's terrible, absolutely. But if it's the only way you get a new bridge, it's what ends up having to happen. Because I don't see moving the trestle far enough away or doing anything, because we still got to take the old.
Well, you know the engineering. I mean, you don't turn a list of the options.
Yeah.
Until we have that.
Right. Yeah. Until you have the results of this, you're not going to know your answer to that. I mean,
that would be a really hard thing to be figuring out. Well, you got Derek cranes out there at $100,000 a day.
You can't wait till construction to figure this out.
That's why we need it, but that we all agree, that's why you need to test.
At some point, you can do all the test piling in the world, but as soon as you get out there using maybe a bigger crane or whatever Kiewit has, you could still have an issue on the bridge, and that's a valid.
You could. This reduces the chance. It reduces the risk. You're reducing the risk.
We're mitigating, we're not eliminating.
Right.
Reasonably minimizing the risk the best we can.
Well, couldn't we also just make, couldn't we do for the RFP or the actual request for proposals to go out? Maybe that one would be based on the special meeting negotiation, but shouldn't we have a team identified by the board already to kind of move forward with procurement as needed? And that's, so you kind of get this first part completed and they could be.
Thursday.
Yeah, okay, interesting.
Procurement committee.
Right, and then that way they could also be briefed kind of in tandem, so they don't have as long of a lead up to try to get this something out. Something that. Yeah, but it's another idea.
So I know we want to make sure we have time for Sean. So I think we have a proposal on the table to set a follow-up meeting following or the discussion with you later this week.
Yeah, I'll bring this motion. I move that we set up a meeting Thursday at 4:00, including an executive session, to discuss the procurement issues surrounding the test pile buildup.
If it's needed,
yes,
we can cancel it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll second that motion.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thursday at 4 o'clock, there's contract negotiation.
We can move that up.
Around.
Some other day.
Yeah.
Whatever y'all want to do.
That gets us to informational items. I think I would like to call the BIP grant application done.
Yep.
So that brings us to July financial statements.
Yes, and I am here if I can get my audio to work, video to work, sorry, something. Can you see me?
Oh.
Well, that's weird. I can see me. Okay.
That'll be even weirder.
There we go. Hopefully that works better. I don't have a lot to add. We continue to refine the finance package that you're getting, and I've been working with the finance committee on that, and Mark Flaming has been super helpful because he's brought up some really good suggestions. And in the next package, what I want to start including is the status of our grants, in that Mark has asked that we include how much is left, because the financial reports that I do are geared. They're sort of like what we get audited on, right? So they're the money that has been spent primarily, and then whatever assets that we have on hand. But it doesn't really talk about the grants and where we're at with the grants as far as how much is left. And so I'm going to start including a report. We have that information because each time we submit to each agency, it always shows how much is left. And so it's just a matter of pulling that information together and getting that out to you. So I will start providing that. And if somebody has a question about it now, we can pull that information together sooner. But we will get that out. The other thing I wanted to point out, and we talk about this endlessly in some of our other meetings, but the build grant is still not closed out. That is in Federal Highway's hands. Whenever they ask questions, we respond back immediately, but then we don't hear from them for a long time. So Tahi and Andrew have been really good about following up on that and trying to get that closed out. The other thing that we're experiencing right now is WashDOT move to a new system, and so they're kind of slow on payment as well. That 1.7 million that they owe us on our latest request is still outstanding. ODOT is paying within a week to 10 days, so that's been awesome. But WashDOT is still a bit behind. So I'm hoping I hope that after they have a few months under their belt with this new system, that they'll get faster with getting the money out. And it's not just us, it's everybody that they send money out to. So I felt bad for our rep there because I think everybody's complaining at her and it's out of her hands. But anyway, I just did want to make sure that was on your radar, that is being slow. Other than that, there's not too much else I want to add, but I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any questions.
So, just want to add something on the WashDOT side. They are not slowing down their approval. They're just the system not spitting out the disbursement check. So we do know what's approved, and that's kind of basis of the next package we are putting together. So our policy, we are still submitting once a month as per the contract. It's not delaying our ability to submit our request package once a month. I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, that is correct.
What are we at on the aging on the closeout now?
How many? I'm not sure. It's over a year that it's been. It's 400 and some days.
Sean has that in his report.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, it's been out there a while.
400 days.
Yeah, it's been out there a while, but it's not HNTV, it's not the port, it's not, we're getting them the information as soon as they ask for it, we're getting it to them.
I think, and Sean, you're going to show us that one particular item, but it's over 400 days and growing. Yeah. And I've sat in a number of those meetings, and it's like they keep changing what they want. And here's another rock, and then it's another 2 months. Oh, I didn't really get this. Yeah, you did. Well, can you send it again? There's a couple more months. And I think at some point in time, we need to send a letter to a certain person and his boss to say, this is ridiculous. We need your help. He's understaffed. He's focused on perhaps other work, but we're sitting on $400,000+ that we've had to take out of other funding to pay this bill, which we've already done. We got to get this thing fixed because it will absolutely kill us in construction. 400 is one thing, but when you're spending 20 million a month.
Well, I thought, didn't we design an entire dashboard to manage this? And so how much money have we spent trying to get this $400,000 of retained? I mean, most of it's retained, right?
It's not retained, there's no retainage, it's just paying the last bill, so we.
Oh, this is just the final invoice?
Just the final invoice.
Do they still hold retainage?
No.
Oh, they don't
No,
have
they
it?
don't.
Okay.
But they're going all the way back to the very first invoice 3 or 4 years ago and picking it apart
After it's been approved.
after it's been approved and paid. And they're asking for stuff every month, 2 months. They ask for more stuff. So I'm sorry, but I think it's a great big delay tactic. Because this individual's got other things going on that he perceives as a higher priority than getting this cleared up.
Is there a prompt payment clause that they're potentially in violation of?
I mean,
Not to say that would be the first avenue that we would go, but it might be something that.
it's one of those things that's once all information is finalized thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, who determines when all information is finalized? I mean, yes, there is.
It's got enough wiggle room in it.
Yeah.
We don't want to get
They've been responsive enough.
I think the concerning thing is that the next grant that is wrapping up, we're seeing the same thing. I think so there's a closeout that you get to the final billing, and that seems to be where it all gets locked up, isn't it? Or is that just my
We'll see.
perception?
I mean, the raise is going to be closing in the next 2 months. We'll see if it
You're
has.
gonna make sure that the last amount with that bill is gonna be $20, right?
Yes. We're going to short. Yes.
No, yeah, seriously, that's.
Oh, yeah, we learned that. That's a lesson learned already.
But with things like this, we can get really angry and we can stomp our feet and get nowhere. And so if we're going to do something, I want to know, is there something we can do that's productive? And I haven't turned up the proposal yet for what we can do that's productive. We may just have to grin and bear it. And if there are people who know how to work through these things and to get actual results on these, great. But I haven't heard any suggestion that that's a possibility.
I mean, we have the final invoice in already, but your idea, could you split the invoice to where you have $10 left and you have $390,999, right? Like,
Figure that out.
okay, there's another idea, otherwise if you could do that though.
So, I mean, is there a point here where, you can take an adversarial tool, or we can try to say, is there anything we can do to get you financial help so that someone that can manage the finances?
We've done that with him. We haven't done it with his boss.
That's where I'm asking, what's the next escalation, or where do we set as a policy for the board of, if this isn't complete by this date,
Or is the right path to incorporate it into kind of future negotiations with
Exactly.
DOT? If we save it for, after when we're talking about much bigger dollars, under infra and BIP, saying this is an issue that we've had in the past. This is what it's taken to get resolved. This, we could afford it for $400,000 invoice. We can't for a $10 million invoice.
Seems like that strengthens the discussion point about payment on invoice rather than reimbursement.
But I think Ben's point is, when is the time to have this discussion? Like, are we better?
400 days in, a little bit.
We're more interested in it for moving forward.
This is a bigger problem.
Yeah, I think when we sign the next agreements is the time to point this out and bring it up and use it as a leverage to get the pay on invoice, and here's why. And I'm going to tell you what they're going to tell you. This is a reimbursement program. The fact that you don't have money to pay it up front and then get reimbursed is not their problem.
Can we get the actual language though on the pay portion, what was brought up? Because a reasonable time, eventually even in the Army Corps, if you don't get paid within 30 days, you get a 3%, you actually could start tracking, this is how much money you actually owe us versus this is how much we're invoicing. And now I just get a paper trail. And yes, not to become adversarial, but at the same time, when we are talking about the same person or department being in charge of multi-million-dollar grants, that amount would be more over time. And just showing that, I just think they're reasonable people. Not like they're not trying to pay us, but if we could say this is how much you actually owe us versus, because there is in every grant, as well as I do with federal stuff. I mean, if they're not paid within 30 days, there is an escalation percentage that they owe you if they're not paid within a reasonable time.
I'm pretty sure Andrew has all that information, so.
Yeah, we can send out to
I think we're doing all of those things.
I'm not saying, I'm just.
Jake's point is the right thing. When's the right time to say, okay, that's enough. This is where we got to do it. And I kind of go to Mike. When we get the bid and you sit down to negotiate that, there's probably a list of things that didn't work for us that we need to figure out a way to change.
If anything, I would like to start that process of having the policies in place of what that program is going to be, because we can't afford a single bump along that road. And if we don't have that figured out before the bid, before the negotiations, it already takes a year about to get your contract agreement. Yeah. Now we're going to add this conversation on top of it. You just extended out that negotiation. I think we need to be, we've documented this whole experience. We need to be able to document this experience and take it to federal highways at the DC level to say, this is our experience. How do we get through this so that this doesn't happen again?
And have 2 or 3 options on what we can do to help them.
Yes. And I'd really like to know how much money we've spent on this over the last 400 days internally. Because if it's more than $400,000, I'm going to fight out.
$400,000.
So I think we got all the way through Debbie's. Did anybody have any questions there? And I really want to save time so that we can get through Sean's presentation on the finance piece. So, Sean, I think we're ready for you because nobody opened their mouth.
And sorry,
you had to say.
We talked about this at the next funding and finance meeting. I know we talked about it in the but just follow up on this discussion.
Can I share my screen? Then
yeah. I'm not stopping you anyway.
Okay, so kick off the progress report. This is for July. The status of the project in July, and in early August, we completed the 60% design or cost estimate update and the CSRA. So those results are not incorporated into the report yet. It will be August report this time next month.
What's CSRA?
Cost, schedule, risk analysis. The first thing to call your attention to is the interim milestone dates. So the 60% design package, a contract requirement, was picked up on June 5th. And this was split up into two components. There was the foundation and substructure package and then everything else. And the reason it was split up was the permit delay due to the geotech boring investigation. So this milestone was completed August 21st. Again, this is as of July. But that submittal came in last Friday, so I completed that. And it slipped 9 days compared to this report last month, largely due to on the pier being designed. We deleted some rebar and added some post sheet to reduce construction costs. So that redesign effort made the 60% design package submittal slip by 9 days, and the RFC or release construction design package slipped by 4 days to March 24th, 2027. And then the final milestone is the phase 1B completion. By contract is supposed to be June 21 of 27 and is currently forecasted as September 17th of 27. So that slipped by 11 days from last month, largely due to permit delays. Any questions about the schedule milestones?
Which permits? You said permit delays,
I think it was 409 and the 408. 408.
which is which one?
Army Corps.
Army Corps one.
Army Corps of Engineers. That's the one that you.
We're paying for them to review.
That's the one that you just finalized.
Okay, so the next part that I want to talk about is the earned value metrics. So there's a lot going on in this table. Is there, I guess, to provide some background or reiterate what we talked about last month. At the beginning of the project, we had a plan of how we were going to spend all the contract money. When I say we, I mean all collectively, the contractor, HMTV, all the other categories. We set out a plan of how the contract money was going to be spent. And then each month we go along, we compare against that plan. And did we do this activity? Yes or no? And if we did, we claim that value for the earned value. If we didn't, we obviously don't. And then we have our actual costs. So one of the key metrics to get your progress or your percent complete is this CPI, which is your earned value divided by your actual value. So anything over a 1 is good. Anything below a 1 means that you're over budget. So this month, Kiewit's earned value was quite a bit lower than it has been trending in the past few months. Again, that was largely due to the redesign on the pier cap beam. Also, they said that they were overclaimed on some areas of their plan. So this month they earned just under 1.3 million against actual cost of $2 million. On the to date, though, they're at just under 22.5 million against actual cost of 14.5 million. Meaning that despite July not being a great performance month for Kiewit, their to date is still trending about $9 million under budget, completing their work under budget. Talking about the entire project and not just Kiewit, in July we had just under $2.6 million of earned value or progress against actual costs of just under $3 million. And our to date brings it to just under 35.6 million of earned against actual cost of 26.8 million. That's the $9 million of it. Any questions about the earned value?
And what percent complete are you?
We are about halfway.
Okay, so halfway through the job, we're underrunning by, Kiewit's underrunning by $8 million halfway through. So is there do you see any plans that they're going to start spending more than they're earning? Or do you see that underrun continuing to grow?
Yeah, all to date indications point that they are going to underrun by $15 or $16 million. Mike Shannon and I have a meeting with Kiewit Thursday morning. This is every other week we go over their productivity and their claim. And this is one of the things that we're going to talk about is that in the last 5 months, they've shown pretty consistently expenditures month to month. And their forecast for the next 7 months shows 35% higher than those. So the question is, if in your peak burn rate of the 60% design package, you were spending X, why would you go up by 35 or 4% in the 100% phase? What's going on? And what we suspect is that they're just pushing all their unspent money forward, and it's riding the data date. They just keep pushing it forward. That we're going to spend that tomorrow. We're going to spend. And in reality, it won't get spent. It's still underrun by 15.
So it's going to be really important that, like Jeff, really watch the expenditures that they're making. They're not just loading up the end of the job to spend all the money. I agree with you. If they're at 60% and they're $8 million underrun, if all of a sudden at 100% they're back on the budget, that means they've doubled their expenditure. And why is the last half of the job going to cost you twice as much?
Right.
Same token, the last milestone was 77 days late, and they're already running 15 days late on future milestones. How are they going to catch up?
by spending more money, throw more people at it. I guess the next question would be is so according to them, they still plan to spend 100% of the money, correct?
They're saying that they're gonna underrun by 8.5 million currently. So we think that it's gonna be closer to 15 or 16 million, and that's why we think that they are pushing some of their forecast, and they're saying that they are gonna spend it. But they are saying that they're gonna underrun by 8.5 million.
So that's where your basis comes from for the conversation.
That's where your funding's gonna come from for your test pile program.
Okay,
So one other thing related to the schedule, they finished their geotech borings this month, so they had a pretty heavy number in their geotech that they had not closed out.
Mhm.
So now that that geotech work is completed and their reports will be coming in, they'll be able to close those out, which will also generate some additional underrun from them that they'll be able to capture.
So what'll happen, their earned value will go up. The actual value won't go up proportionally.
Yeah. They'll take that.
Because they've already spent some of that money.
How do we get the owner's rep up to 1.5 there?
You can go through all of our computer. I can go back and tell you how much we didn't spend on the previous 3 versions.
Go ahead, continue.
The next thing to
I knew that was coming.
The next thing to go through is our funding availability or cash flow chart. So as a reminder, this red dash line is available funding that the project has to spend. And the green line is our total project expenditure. So up through, this report is as of July. So up through July, it accounted for all the actuals, and then we have all of our to-go planned in here. So the idea is to keep that green line below the red line so that we are spending money that we actually have. And for a while, it was crossing spending money that we don't have in July of 2027. So we strategically pushed some of the right-of-way and environmental costs to the final month, August 2027, after we get a significant bump of funding in July of 2027. So there is this bottleneck. That's the main focus of attention on this bottleneck in July of 2027. And as cost underruns materialize, this gap could grow, and we could accelerate some of those right-of-way or environmental expenditures.
How much underrun is in the green line right now?
At the bottleneck, it's about 8.5 million.
Okay.
So your green line you've lowered to reflect the anticipated underrun by 8 million to date with Kiewit.
Right.
What you don't have in here yet is a recognition that the FO is going to underrun as well.
Yeah.
So that number could go from 8 to 17 or so, which gives you more cushion out there at the end that you're not going to be that close to the red line.
Right.
As long as we get that extra money in September of
Well, that's
26.
programmed from the states.
It's programmed.
States that are in-
Oh, this is going to be a cash flow project.
July
all the way
of
to the end.
27 is cash from the states?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
New value.
No, I'm sorry. I'm talking about the bump from the 6 million that we're waiting for.
Yeah, that we're waiting on. That's the CDC right
The-
there.
Oh,
Yes.
the first bump. Yeah, the second bump.
Yeah, and that to-go, Commissioner Fox, that you're talking about, we do have another chart in the backup. So this full report, it's like 18 pages for the sake of time. In this board meeting, I'm going through just the executive agenda, executive summary, sorry. The to-go plan or forecast based off of the CPI and SPI is included at the very end, and it does show that 16 million.
You can also see what he was pointing out earlier about their current performance in the orange. They just finished their 60%, which was a major design. And you can see where those numbers came in. So for their remaining work to stay above that, just kind of indicates that they're pushing that money to the far end. So that's where that projected.
They're just doing a mathematical exercise.
They are.
Just shoving it forward.
Yeah, they're just taking a bigger bucket and squeezing it into a smaller time frame.
So maybe this is a little preemptive, but again, like in the beginning, I said we updated the 60% or the project cost estimate As a result of the 60% design package, we conducted the cost and schedule risk assessment or analysis. And early indications are that we are staying within the 1.12 billion, but this part of the report will be updated in the auditor's report this time next month with the results of those things.
Okay.
And then the trends, so we're monitoring all of these things that we're calling trends that could affect the overall cost of the project. And, if we have a design change that reduces the cost of construction, then we take that money and we put it in our contingency bucket or slush fund, whatever you want to call it. We're calling it construction contingency. And the dip that happened in July is due to Kiewit's performance in July, their earned value being $800,000 less than their actual cost. What that does is that it forecasts their final cost as being higher than it was in the previous month. So that's why this orange dipped down by a few million in this month.
I'm confused. So 4 million drop, it looks like, or something close to that. But I thought you said it was a much smaller number before.
No, so what I'm saying is in the June report, their cost forecast based on their performance up through June indicated that they were going to underrun by 16 to 20 million.
Okay.
Their performance in July had earned value 1.2 million against 2 million of actual costs, or being over budget 800,000. And that affected their to date through July, meaning that instead of underrunning by 60 to 20 million, now it's 12 to 16
Okay,
million.
so it is simple math, it's just I have the wrong numbers.
Yeah, I think so.
So
there's nothing.
The bump from 130 to 150, was that the 60% design and what we think the actual construction cost is going to be on our ICE base to that?
No, there were a number of trends that got an estimate update. This was in the June report, and I did include an announcement of what went into that. Off the top of my head, I don't remember, and I could follow up with you and send you what exactly all the components that went into that huge rise in June.
I think it'd be interesting to see the types of trends in this report each time.
Yeah, so the trends are included in the backup too. There are some of the 18 pages if we want to, and if we want to drill into any of those, we can. We do in the engineering and construction committee meetings sometimes. Funding and finance we do sometimes too, not as many because they're more construction related. But.
So the big ones that have happened in that period, correct me if I'm wrong, was the drill shafts went from 4 to 2 per pier and 6 to 4 in 3 piers.
That was a big one.
That was a substantial reduction.
Another one was doing a forecast of Kiewit's total cost based on their performance up through June. Right, that was a significant portion when we captured in a potential forecast. Hey, they're going to underrun by $20 million. We need to account for this.
So do I have that right? Going off what Mike's saying is we have 1.12 billion. In that we had a contingency inside that. We reduced the number of shafts significantly, and we haven't increased our contingency during that time very much.
We did. So the results from the 60% estimate, again, are not in this report because that was completed in early August and this is as of July. But it looks like by deleting the shafts, there are some other changes that happen in the shaft design because of seismic requirements, but we reduced the cost by $3.5 million. So we're drilling. Yeah, that is, a surprising number when you talk about how many shafts we deleted. So we're drilling into some of it, but a big reason why it was $3.5 million instead of a bigger number is that the shaft casing, the steel casing, previous design was 1 inch thick. The new design is 2 inches thick. And that's an $8.5 million increase in just casings, even though you have 40% fewer casings.
So the shaft size went up. You have fewer, but the shaft size went up.
Thickness.
went up.
Well, thickness.
So we're doing a full reconciliation exercise. Commissioner Fox talked about it earlier in this meeting, and that's one of the big topics to go over.
But again, the idea here is we're trying to hold the $1.12 billion total project And as we find design changes and efficiencies and so on, we take it from above the line and the savings. So we take it out of the construction budget and we move it down below the line into construction and into contingency.
Right.
Thus still holding the total number. Now, coming out of the 60%, I don't think the 60 is totally in here yet.
Okay.
But right now, our contingency bucket has grown since 30%.
That's right.
Roughly, what is it now, 160?
154, I think, is the number now, 148.
How much is the increase in steel put into that cost?
Off the top of my head, so the unit price of structural steel and rebar did increase from the 30% to the 60%.
$3.
Well, that's what it is in the 60% estimate. That's not what they.
Oh, that's right. That wasn't the increase. That was.
It didn't move that much cost-wise. We've been tracking it every month.
We also had we already tracked it with an escalation percentage, and so it's around what we already were planning for the escalation. That's where we projected it to be expensive.
We had it originally in there at 4.5% growth every year.
Yep.
And indices are showing, it bounces around a little bit, but it's not significant.
7% almost in the last 2 months.
So just remember, there's steel, there's concrete, there's diesel.
Well, it's the big ones are rebar, girder steel.
Concrete.
Okay, well, I was purely asking about this.
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and it's one of the things that will come out of this reconciliation exercise also to see exactly which needles moved how far from the percent to the 60%. Off the top of my head, I don't recall. But
so, and there's kind of a design evolution piece there that we pushed to remove piers, which they were successfully able to do. But when we got to the 60% analysis where we could actually do a full model analysis, I don't remember what they call it,
nonlinear time history.
Yeah, of the bridge. I think there were some things that came up out of that started to drive the casing. And we have one pier that ended up with 4 drilled piers as well. So instead of, we thought we were going to get to just 2, we're actually at 3. And part of that is to deal with impacts and the seismic load and the way the bridge distributes that load from the deck to the piers and the piers to the deck. So I think
if we hadn't reduced the number of piers, the cost would have went up significantly.
Well, we might not have had to do all the steel casing. We might have been able to not have to go to a 2-inch casing.
Oh, really? It's that. So it's trade-offs.
But it's still a savings, so it's worth it.
Right.
Yeah.
And it feels like we're always trying to sharpen the pencil too, like we're asking the question of, well, is 2 inches really necessary? Or seismic requirements we really need to be the most robust
Absolutely.
category? We're asking the questions.
And of course, if you go to fewer number of shafts, that means less work out in the river, which means less risk.
So, with the 60% project cost estimate update and the results from the CSRA, I expect the contingency chart to have a big change next month, and we'll have an accounting of what went into that. The last thing I want to talk about for this board meeting is the reimbursement packages. And for that, I'm going to turn the time over to our colleague, Andrew Gong. What's on there?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right. So we've gone through this section with the E&C committee and the F&F committee. So feel free to ask questions or follow-up questions. I know that we've touched on a few factors and a few points on this already. So the build grant is still outstanding. You'll see the number there. This report is through the end of July 31st. So all those days in review agency are reflective of the end of July. And so those are the 2 state ones are so small in the days outstanding. I can speak further to the Build 5 packet and the work that we're doing there if needed. Raise 11, as noted, we had some additional questions asked about that one. As of this month, we submitted all of the data that was requested back in July. We also got new rates from HNTV and their subs for 2026 that we submitted on August 5th with an inquiry about the status of both of those packages and follow-up. We also had a meeting on the August 13th with FHWA. Unfortunately, our contact that we work with on these grants wasn't able to attend that meeting, but another colleague said that they would follow up on that matter at that time. And so that was our latest check-in on that, but we do follow up basically weekly and in our monthly meetings regarding these matters. On the 2 state grants, the Oregon lottery bond was back in our bank account the first week of the month, so we saw about an eight-day turnaround from submittal to cash back in our account for that one. And then, as Debbie stated, the Washington one, they are dealing with the new software systems, so we are seeing a little bit of a slowdown there, coming in at about a month for processing on that front. Any questions?
I think they're only a month or 2 into that software change, and they've made some pretty good progress on fixing it. So I anticipate that to get better pretty quickly.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yep.
That's it for the board on the project progress update. Are there any questions? It's free time.
I think that is the last item. Are there any upcoming items that you want to highlight? You've got them all written down there.
No, I don't think so.
I think so. So you wanted to ask about success.
Just a quick status. Where are we on success?
Success, we received a email back, not a formal, I guess not an email. Stewart had a conversation with OPRD. They are going to take some steps to allow some mitigations. I've asked them to give us a formal letter on what they're going to allow and what they're not. So as soon as we get that formal letter, we'll send it out, but they are going to make some accommodations for some of the temporary. So the number will go down. The mitigation amount will go down. I don't have the final letter to tell you exactly how much.
But it didn't look like we can get all the way to self-mitigate.
It didn't look like it was going to be 100%, but it looked like it potentially will go down quite a bit.
Good.
So I'm waiting on the letter to tell you exactly what it is, but it should be indications where it's going to be a lot better than it was.
When did Stewart talk to me?
Last week. So he made a request for a formal letter. I would think we'll get it this week.
I didn't hear about this.
It just happened. He just had he sent me an email last week on it.
Does that, if that number comes down significantly, does that give us other avenues to meet that rather than going?
I want to see the specifics first. I made a specific request to the governor's office on this, and I want to understand where we are and what's going on.
Yeah, that's why I haven't really sent it to anybody, because I wanted in writing versus a verbal conversation of exactly what they agreed to and not.
Just a half step ahead of everybody.
Because I'm afraid to tell you that
they're looking for solutions. Oriented, it sounds like that they've made some progress.
Yes.
So let's redo that.
Yeah. Once we get a more formal, like I said, I don't want to summarize something and have a formal letter come out that's totally different. So
great.
Not quite time to celebrate it.
Not till I see something in writing that they've agreed to, yes.
And I'm not done until I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
But you're going to keep going until they've had.
What I've stated is that I think we need a solution that is something that we can explain to the public without them saying, what's wrong with you people? And that's what we're working on.
And we got to get it down to a single sentence.
Something that is reasonable, sensible, that doesn't give government a bad name.
Are there any other items that we want to grab real quick before we close the meeting?
This is what happens when we don't show up in one day.
It's like, what happened? You guys
All right.
At a convention or something, everybody showed up today.
It's over.
Yeah, Catherine gets back in town and it's.
All bets are off.
Scheduled now for Thursday at 4
Thursday.
o'clock. We'll get a
Perfect.
invite, I assume.
Somebody's going to send that around.
I
Get on the
think
calendar.
yeah, if you don't already have
Kelly
it.
will be sending it soon, or Amy, one of the two will be sending it.
Yeah, we'll get that out. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go ahead and close this meeting. Our next meeting, listen for it, is September 14th, because we do have a holiday week messing with it.
I will not be here at that meeting. I will be on vacation. Somebody else will be.
What does that mean?
Nor will I.
Just remember what happened last time you were here at a meeting.
They'll talk about that.
Let's make all of the decisions.
All right, so
Tried. You guys wouldn't do it today. So.
What's that acronym? Vacation? I said that.
They do it once a year.
I don't think I'm familiar with that.
all right, so next meeting, 2 to 4, September 14th here. Thank you, everybody.
Meeting after.
After the executive session.
Yeah.
Special meeting, executive session on Thursday.
All the public listening in, definitely.
I just want to say it right. If it's being recorded, we get it right.
Special
All right,
executive session on Thursday.
Okay. We are adjourned.